Hey, it's Mazzy, and welcome back. I'm recording this on Thanksgiving morning, and this is a video about some wonderful reissues that came out in the last few weeks. I think one goes back actually maybe 6 months or so, but these are some comps and some reissues that I really like and have been spinning my turntable pretty regularly lately. I play a lot of records. I've been getting a lot of the usual question, and the one question I get the most and comment is, how can you listen to all those records? I've responded to this, but I have a lot of new subscribers now, a lot of new viewers. How do you listen to all those records? Well, simply is you put them on the turntable and you play them, that's it. And again, I'm not gonna listen to everything all the time, and no way I can possibly listen to all my collection where we are right now in any small segment of time. But I look at it as my library. So when I want to hear that record, I can go and pull it. I get in the mood. I put something on and it makes me maybe interested in something else. So you go from here to there to there to there, and you enjoy music. Now, of course, I could do that streaming. I'm not a streamer, and I'm not the only one. But it's just not for me. I appreciate it. I don't like that the artists kind of get screwed on it, but I appreciate it. And I know that physical media, especially vinyl, even though it's been growing, it's a small segment. So I'm recording this on Thanksgiving morning. 47 years ago, I was at Winterland at the Last Waltz, the band's final show, one of the best concerts I've ever attended. And of course, I would suggest if you haven't seen The Last Waltz, the Scorsese concert film, you owe yourself to see it. Just blast it, turn it on. It's a fun show, and it was totally worthwhile being how old was I? A 22-year-old seeing that show in 1976 at Winterland. All right, I want to start out with one of my top 3 favorite bands, and that's the Kinks. This is volume 2. The Kinks, I'm sure you know the Kinks. People sort of have their camps of kingdom. They like the 60s pie and reprise Kinks for the most part. That's, All Day, All the Night, Something Else, just Arthur, all those great records. Now, I love those records, but I'm also a fan of the theatrical period of RCA and beyond. Well, this year, not only did that Fab Four put out 2 reissues of comps, these 2 reissues came out. This came out about 6 months ago. These came out on BMG. This is The Journey Part 1, and just recently The Journey Part 2 came out. I'd almost maybe have changed the color, done a yin-yang thing, but I get it, because if you're not paying attention, for those uninitiated, will go into a store and think this is this, but volume 2, even though it says it there, that's a minor quibble. What's wonderful about these collections, these were curated by Ray Davis. And I'm gonna say this now because there's always some wanker that says, Maslov, it's Ray Davies. You gotta pronounce it right. Ray Davies. No, it's Ray Davis. Go back to some interviews with Ray, BBC, going back to the 60s and the 70s. Ray pronounces his name Davis. Now, there is a little bit of typical wanker brother disagreement. Brother Dave, apparently, I haven't heard it, but I've been told that Dave does pronounce it Davies. So it's Dave Davies and Ray Davis. Go figure. But that's what it is, so I'm sticking by it. And every time I've gotten a comment, I've tried to respond and try to put a link to actually him saying it or the BBC interview saying it. It's Ray Davis. Anyway, Ray Davis curated these 2 comps that came out this year, and there's a million Kinks comps. And my favorite, actually, aside from a greatest hits, is King Chronicles that came out in 1971, I believe. 71, yeah, I think it was 71, 72. And that's when they left Reprise Records. And what's great about that comp, it's not just the hits. There's a lot of deep tracks there. And I think the best comps, at least from my point of view, like The Doors' Weird Scenes from the Gold Mine, you don't just have the top hits that you hear over and over and over again. You have a lot of deep cuts, and this is what's amazing about these and how I highly recommend these. Now, the Kinks records aren't audio masterpieces in terms of people, in terms of recording. They didn't record at Abbey Road, but they're great sounding records. These two record sets two record sets, were mastered by Kevin Gray, and actually they sound really good. Now, again, it really depends on the time. The earlier songs are maybe a little more tighter, not as open, but it's the music, as I say. We get into the theatrical period, and it really opens up the stuff they recorded for RCA. And hopefully, I don't think they've done it yet, but they'll go into, maybe they'll do another volume eventually next year. The reason these came out this year too, this is the 60th anniversary of the Kinks, 1963 to 2023. And another thing I love about these, they're not in chronological order. I think that makes these better because you start out, let's pass on this one now because I've spoken about it before. You can look it up. We're talking now about volume 2 that literally just came out. We opened up till the end of the day from 1965. Great song. We get into Preservation from 1974. We go back to David Watts from 67. This Time Tomorrow from 1970, but it's a 220 mix. And then one of my favorite Kinks songs from 65, A Well-Respected Man. We go into Monica, 68, and we end up with a very deep cut from Preservation Act 2, which is called Scrap Heat City. And it's actually not sung by Ray or Dave, it's sung by Marianne Price. And probably most of you are saying, who the hell is Marianne Price? She was a member of the Hot Licks, Dan Hicks and the Hot Licks. And I saw the final shows of the Hot Licks when they were Dan Hicks and the Hot Licks at Winterland in 1973, I believe. And they opened up for the Kinks, and that's where Ray met Marianne. And Marianne would go on and work on Preservation Act 2. And it's a great song. Ray does come in and do some harmonies. But they also go into Lola, Sunny Afternoon, Animal Farm. Creeping Jean is the deeper cut. See My Friends, Two Sisters, Money Talks, 74. So they go from the 60s into the 70s and back again. Of course, dedicated follower of fashion about the whole Carnaby Street scene. Where Are They Now from 1974 from Preservation. And that's a wonderful song about also swing in London and the politics and the fashion, political fashion and of the time, from Christine Keeler and the Profumo affair that happened with members of parliament and Soviet Russian spies. And just a great, great song. 20th Century Man from 71. So they take the RCA years, the Pie/Reprise years, and it's a wonderful, wonderful comp. And then there's side 4, and the first 3 tracks really surprised me, and they're amazing sounding live recordings from the 1975 tour of the Kinks soap opera, one of their theatrical. I actually love that record, but these sound so good. So I go into New Victoria Suite, Everybody's a Star, Slum Kids, Face in the Crowd, a beautiful series of songs from that tour. The recordings are great. It makes me want to get the whole recording of that whole tour. Those have never been released before. And then it, of course, ends up with Holiday Romance from 75, which is a wonderful seaside kind of romp, typical Ray Davis. And I'm still, I believe that Ray is one of the 3 great songwriting teams, solo, of the 1960s in pop music. Bob Dylan, Lennon McCartney, and Ray Davis. I give him the edge over even Jagger Richards. I think, obviously, great albums throughout the 60s, especially the late 60s. But in terms of, the career of songwriting, I'm giving Ray a nod. Big Sky and God's Children end up this. But this is a fantastic record. And these 2, again, you might want to get the red and blue maybe for remixes. No, go for the real deal. There's only a couple of remix things on here, but it's great music. And if you only know the hits, this is a time to get into the deep cuts, because the deep cuts are pretty magnificent. I think there's one track, maybe it's Money Talks, that I'm not a huge fan of, but I think that's the only song on either of these records. That doesn't really bowl me over. And if anyone says the Kinks don't rock, listen to those live songs and really get into some deep tracks. All you think is Ray's wonderful melodic, suburban-like stories and lyrics, which is a big part of his writing. But the Kinks, especially with Brother Dave, his guitar playing, they're a friggin' great rock band. Next, in terms of reissue, Mo5, we're going for Mo Fidelity, And we're going with the 1985 release Run-DMC. This is their second album, King of Rock. And it's interesting, it does have the 50th anniversary tag here of hip hop's 50th. I had gotten a promo of this when it came out, the original version of this, and I really liked this record. When I did my 95 purge of a lot of records, this was one of them, unfortunately. So it was great that MoFi just released this on their super vinyl. But what's nice about this, for a lot of people who, you know, the uninitiated with rap, especially back then, it really mixes rock and roll. A lot of guitar, a lot of rock jams within the hip hop beats. It's a fantastic record. And of course, the following year, they would go on and do that collaboration, Aerosmith, that finally got MTV to play this stuff and to play hip hop and rap music. And of course, part of the reason I'm wearing the black hat today, it's not the same fedora or the same black hat, because look at these friggin' great hats. I mean, obviously, these, you know, so influential for a lot of reasons, and really a wonderful crossover record, Run-DMC. And the sound on this, it's deep, it's not overly bombastic bass-wise, but the guitar, this is a good record to turn up. When I love a MoFi, I love a MoFi. Not everything they do I'm a big fan of, but whatever you think of the DSD step, of course now you get a the sparse code about the how they make the ingredients, if you will, here from analog to DSD to analog console and to lathe. So it's not all digital, it's not all analog, it just cuts to it. And these are wonderful pressings, and I love that they have, I think they have 3 albums now of Run-DMC on MoFi. Highly recommended, really great. If you like this record and you don't have a good copy, instead of trying to find a nice used copy, get that. Now I'm going to show 2 Sinead O'Connor records. Obviously, we lost her this year. One of my all-time favorite singers. I've been all in. I went during the CD era all in on it. And they just reissued, I think, 4 of her records. Lion and the Cobra, which is her debut, which is, that's, if you don't have any record of hers, that's the one with Mandinka. You say Dinka, I say Tonka. Oh God, what a great record. Now, I didn't buy those because I have an original. And of course, I don't know if they issued the second one with the Prince song, which is as great as Prince does it, and he does it great. I'm going for the Sinead O'Connor, and that's a whole other controversial thing with the Prince estate and Sinead. But they finally released these 2, which I had on CD when they came out. After Nothing Compares to You in, 1990, I guess, she puts out this record. And I think she freaked out a lot of her audience. This is Am I Not Your Girl? This is a big orchestrated record of show tunes, standard show tunes, and it's magnificent. She nails these songs. I would say out of this type, you know, a lot of the rock people over the years did Songbook, of course, Linda Ronstadt, Rod Stewart. I'm not a fan of his at all. I like the Linda stuff. Well, my favorite actually was in 73 or 4, I guess, it was Harry Nilsson, A Little Touch of Schmielsen the Night. And Nilsson did the same thing after Schmielsen and Son of Schmielsen, 2 huge records. He goes and does a standards, kind of a career breaker, if you will. And some people thought this was that, and I don't know how well it did, but I listened to it again, and I've heard some people say who've gotten these that they have some issues with the pressings. I think on this one, I had a couple of pops on one track, and that was it. So I haven't had an issue. Again, I have a MC card, very forgiving, but they sound great. The mastering is really good. I don't know the ingredients, as you will, if you will, about that, but this is a wonderful record. She does Why Don't You Do It Right? She goes into Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, that wonderful standard. Secret Love, the great song, Black Coffee. And these are big orchestras, horns, stringed instruments, and she nails it. She doesn't have that, I mean, she's got a strong voice in her Irish lilt way, but it's so beautiful. And she does it in her own, she just makes these hers. Success has made a failure of our home. She does Cry for Me, Argentina, of course, from Evita. And it's really wonderful. It's really beautiful, the orchestration. The album ends with an orchestrated only version, instrumental at the very end, like as an coda, as you would hear on a Broadway play or something. This is a fantastic sounding record, but wait, if this is not for you and you can't handle Broadway tunes, go with this one. This came out after, 2 years later, I guess, after that. And this is Sinead O'Connor's Universal Mother. She did the artwork on the cover. This, I would say that this is her John Lennon Plastic Ono Band album. Not that it sounds anything like that John Lennon album, but this is a therapy album for her. This is an introspective. This is a cry out. This is somewhat political, somewhat about motherhood, somewhat about pain, of loss. There's a song on here she sings after she broke up with Peter Gabriel. And this is a painful record, but this is a beautiful record. There's Irish lilt. There's opens up, after this poetry intro, it opens up with one of my favorite pieces by her, Fire on Babylon, which is kind of this big, heavy, reggae-ish, funky mixed tune with her, and she just yells it out. It's a banshee yell of pain in here. John, I Love You is a beautiful song, and My Darling Child of her son, who she lost before she died on her own, unfortunately. It's so beautiful. The arrangements are lovely. There's intensity, but there's a lot of acoustic love on here, a lot of acoustic low-key music on here. Everything. There's not one bad track on here. What a beautiful record by Sinead O'Connor. Someone we lost too soon. A tragic figure in music and art. There's, her Irish protest rap song on here, talking about what's happening with Ireland and obviously the church and the politics there. And, and she was right. She was right. So Sinead O'Connor's Universal Mother. I highly recommend this record if you can handle Broadway tunes. The other one is so beautiful. And again, as I said, they sound amazing. They sound amazing. My friend Arnaldo sent this to me. This is Spirit Power, the Best of Johnny Marr. And of course, Johnny Marr was the guitar player for the Smiths. He went on to an illustrious career in a way of a sideman, but Johnny Marr, being a sideman, is basically means he's part of the band. And he went through a lot of different artists and bands, and he's been touring on his own with his own band for the last few years, and he has found his voice. He's done, 4 solo albums, I believe, 1 a double, and it's interesting having a best of. He's not really a hit maker per se, like Morrissey even. Even Morrissey in his solo records has some hits, but he's the guitar player. Him and Morrissey wrote those great songs, those great guitar riffs. He's like this rhythm guitar player that is a lead guitar player, but does lead in a rhythmic way. Very unusual, a very wonderful side of music. Now, I've seen him twice, and he's even gotten to be a really good singer. What the irony is, his voice is almost like an echoing or a influence of Morrissey. He doesn't have the overtness and the breadth, intensity of Morrissey's singing, but he's gotten really good. And this last time I saw him in Seattle here, about just a year before the pandemic, it was amazing. And he does like 5 or 6 Smith songs, and he nails it now. How Soon Is Now, of course. He just nails it. Now, the thing about his records, which I find really interesting, except for one track on here, I believe, everything is loud and in your face and brash. And you hear his guitars. As much as I like his records, and I really do, this is a great comp, and I'd say this is a good overview if you want to hear some of it. I miss that he doesn't do any lower key, more guitar oriented. I think there's one track on here like that. I miss his acoustic guitars, his really interesting rhythms, because everything is mixed together as a wash. And I don't know if that's him trying to maybe mask his vocals because he's not as overt, out there in your face, as I said, of Morrissey. He doesn't have the same kind of clever lyrics. And of course, you want to hear Morrissey's lyrics, even with solo stuff. He's funny and he's dark and you can't believe he wrote about that subject matter. He doesn't have that. But he does have a really good sound. I just think, for my personal taste, I'd like him next time, as he does more, to pull back and do some things so you can really hear his wonderful guitar playing, because it's kind of, sometimes it's a fog in there. And I'm not talking about bad mastering or bad recording or anything. It's just the way he chose to do those records. There's obviously more electronics in his music than you would have with a Morrissey record. Morrissey is a little more organic probably, but if you get a chance to see him live, it's great. And so this would be a great overview. I have a video coming up with a bunch of my best ofs at the end of the year. His guitar book, Johnny Marr's guitar book. If you know someone who's a guitar player or likes guitars or just has an appreciation of guitars, that's the Christmas gift for you. Aside from a record, and I'll show it. I'm going to do a book video soon. Johnny Marr's guitars. And pretty much lastly, now this came out last spring, but I've just been revisiting it, and this is XTC's Go 2. This is their second album from 1978. They started out as a punk band out of the UK, Swindon, and Andy Partridge is still in Swindon. That's a whole other story. This is a fantastic album. Now, the earlier albums, they were more sort of punk, but this is sort of, I don't even say post-punk, because it's in that punk period still, but it's like punk power punk. It's great hooks, great in-your-face riffs, but not as melodic as their later records, not as Beatle-like as their later records into the 1980s. But this is a fantastic record. This is an infamous cover by Hipgnosis, and the story goes, they went in for the presentation. Hipgnosis is that great design firm that did many Wings albums of Paul McCartney and the famous Pink Floyd albums, 10cc albums, Scorpion, so many great records. In fact, if you haven't seen it, and if you have Netflix, there's a fabulous new documentary on Hipgnosis, the design firm, on Netflix as we speak. I can't recall the name of it, but seek it out. But the story of this album is they went in for a presentation of cover options for the second album. They were on Virgin Records, I believe, in the UK at the time. And they didn't like any of the stuff that was presented to them. They're walking out and they see this big version of this leaning up apparently against a wall. Now, this is designed by Peter Christopherson. Peter Christopherson was a member of Hipgnosis, who would later go on to be a founding member of Throbbing Gristle, the kind of, I want to say art rock, noise rock, industrial rock musical outfit. But he designed this, and it's basically a generic record cover. This is a record cover. This writing is the design upon the record cover. The design is to help sell the record. We hope to draw your attention to it, encourage you to pick it up, and so on. I don't know if anyone I know has ever read all this. I have, actually. Now, this is an expanded edition. Ape House Records is the label that's put all their editions out, their reissues, XTCs, and they sound fabulous. They're wonderful records. Most of them are extended, expanded. This has a second EP on here. Now, I made the mistake, I remember when I first got this, of putting it on and playing like maybe the first 2 minutes at 33, like the original. Of course, it's an EP 45. So Andy Partridge's slow voice, I don't know, I didn't really pick it up right away. I guess I wasn't paying attention. But the whole series of these, I highly recommend it. This one, again, is more on the punk side. Their later stuff's more melodic. So that is a series of wonderful reissues, and they all sound good, obviously some better than others based on the source material. And I'm going to close out because I did that whole video on these, and I tried again, and this is the biggest failure of the year only because these were the most anticipated records of the year. And I've heard some people say, oh, they're fine, they sound great, but they're only fine. And I still wish I'd like to have one of the audiophile labels. And they don't even need to be audiophile. I wish Universal and Capitol would find someone, and if the tapes are not up to par, use a great digital file, do a DSD, do like what MoFi does with these records. Do intervention, what intervention does. Sometimes they're all analog, sometimes they're not. They're from digital sources. Please, someone do a version of these. I can't believe the band approved these, and maybe they don't get the right to even listen to a test pressing. Please, and I urge you, I know some record label people watch this, and there's a laziness for some record. They just want to get the stuff out, the buyers buy. Now, some records, maybe most people don't care, but when you're coming to something like this that people have been waiting for at least a decade or more, because on the secondary market, those omnivore ones are expensive, the originals are expensive, the CDs are better. So please, you need to do better versions of this. What's going on? The fans who like the sound of these majestic records want them. So that's it. I just showed you some great records. This sounds good. I can't believe you can't do something as good as this, Universal and Capitol Records. You failed there, please. Anyway, Mazzy loves you. Happy holidays all through December. There's going to be a series of best of lists, box sets, reissues, new records, books, all the best. That's all we have to do in December. Mazzy loves you. See you next time.